Dana Banana, this mic is all yours.
Hey everybody, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sweet. I hope you guys have had a good couple weeks. I can't believe it's actually already been 2 weeks, even since I was last here. It feels like time is flying. Um, but interestingly enough, I've been feeling as though while time is flying, especially over the last couple of weeks, I've also felt something of I'm only going to call it what feels like a giant pause. I'm feeling like a certain stillness. And I don't know that it's necessarily in the world because I'll admit I haven't been paying much attention to what's going on in the world. I haven't looked at, I don't watch the news and I don't keep up with that. And I'm other than occasionally scrolling a little on Facebook and reading, stuff from course people, I haven't really spent any time there either, not much, and I don't post. And the only source of news otherwise, because I don't get any from social media at this point, would be when I used to go to the the Yahoo homepage. And a few weeks ago, I'd say about 2.5 or so, 3.5 weeks ago, when I was just feeling especially, I don't know, triggered or just turbulent, it was suggested that maybe I just kind of give scrolling through the Yahoo homepage like a break for about 24 hours. And the 24 hours has turned into almost 3 to 4 weeks at this point. So I have no idea what's going on in the world. So I don't know if the pause I'm referring to is being felt or experienced by anybody else, but I feel as though it is being experienced by me, and that it's not only intentional, but that it is somehow aware of me being aware of it. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody else, but I feel as though it's like intentional, like just stop and be still and remember your choice. And so I guess this would be the theme that I've sort of been living for the last couple of weeks. Um, I mean, you guys know that I've got all the surgery stuff going on, and I will finally have an appointment with the doctor to have that discussed uh, the 21st. Yeah, so I'll know more then. But other than that, I'm really not going to know anything else. I'm not going to know what anything looks like. I'm not going to know what the surgery was for. I'm not going to know what, if anything, was found or what, if anything, may or may not need to be treated until after I come out of the whole thing. And there's a lot of uncertainty with that. And so I've just kind of had to acknowledge it and let that be there and let the discomfort of the uncertainty be there. Um, and so that's been a theme for me within the last couple of weeks. And on top of it, my grandmother, who was over 100, my last living grandparent, passed away, not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before. Um, I just heard the very tail end of the discussion before my talk here, and I heard you guys talking about, or I think that you were probably talking about the death of the body and that kind of thing. I think I heard it might have been Dove or somebody say, it was just a release, probably just in a, or no, I think it was Robert. Robert had put in the chat something to the effect of probably looking down from our own, from above at our own funerals and kind of laughing at them and stuff. And I had also watched a show not that long ago where they were exploring I guess, the Day of Death that they celebrate in Mexico, and they start it with a celebration, and then I guess they go into more of the feeling part of it, which is really just the honoring of the love, that was shared during that person's lifetime, and it seemed like a very holistic, kind of an upbeat, respecting all aspects of the idea of death here in the dream. I thought it was sweet. Um, it seemed to be a real coming together, so to speak. And in thinking about my grandmother, again, she lived to be over 100 and well into her 90s. She had written and published a book. I helped her as much as I could with that. She was going around doing book signings and, and she would still sing in front of people too. I noticed the change seemingly after COVID. It was after her 95th birthday. We all saw her and had this party with her. And then I'd say just a few weeks later, the whole COVID thing had started to happen. And yeah, and just the seeming decline since then. And then it was becoming a matter of, okay, now she's just kind of in this body. She doesn't do anything anymore. She's not even responsive, but I knew she was still lucid. Like I knew she was still there, right? She was still aware, just choosing not to respond. And we all kind of felt like it seemed cruel, to feel so trapped in a body and just not be able to do anything anymore. And here she had lived so fully, um, up until those last few years. And let me see here, because I'm going to try to get to the chat stuff when they come in. Oh, yeah, message just before I joined the meeting. Yeah, but I still read it and it was still a really cool message here, getting the feeling that once we leave this illusion, we can look from above the battlefield and laugh at attending our own funeral. Yeah. um, I still think that was a pretty cool observation. But but I've had to sit back and even ask myself, how do I know what she was going through? How do I know what she was feeling? How could I possibly know what somebody else's experience was? I had spoken to another family member and he had said, I just hate to think of what she went through before, in the days or whatever before she died. And I had said to him, do you really want to borrow that worry? I think was the way I had phrased it. Do you really want to borrow that worry? Because do we know for a fact how she felt, what she was going through? And it's my take on it was no. And it was kind of just I didn't mean to correct, but afterward, I kind of felt like I was correcting. It was like just a little something else to pay attention to. How do I even, much like he may not know what her experience was or wasn't, the days before she passed, I really don't know either. I don't know. I don't know when somebody else is right or wrong. And I caught that inclination to correct them, even if it was a more quote unquote spiritually based correction, and noted that and kind of, you know, made mention of it to them and just said, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to correct you or anything. I couldn't possibly know what's true. Lynn had put exactly sitting quietly while the world turns around me is very peaceful. Yeah, I wish I could say I've been feeling peace, but I've really just been feeling all my shadows dancing around me. I heard that I guess once you start to do this kind of work a lot, you might feel things more intensely than you used to. And I'm feeling that. I'm feeling as though what used to be undercurrents are now open waves that I'm just kind of swimming in. And everywhere I look, something from beneath the surface of the ocean is up floating around me. And it's this pause that seems to be happening is providing me this opportunity to choose really just which thought system I want to use to for everything I could possibly see or look at or experience. And that it's aware of my looking at it back and choosing. With this whole thing with my grandmother, in addition to the grief that I experienced it profoundly the next day. It was like the entire day. I uh I just cried cried and cried and cried on and off, hard. And it was like, on one hand, I knew that I was crying for her. And on the other hand, I knew that it was actually just a long needed release that just, I guess it needed a catalyst. And so I also kind of looked at the whole thing as, all right, this situation just occurred in my life and it has just pulled everything that's sort of been sitting there up to the surface and allowed for this beautiful release. And I was aware of it while I was crying. It was like, yes, it had to do with her. Yes, it had to do with all of the thoughts that go along with, I'm never going to see this person again in the flesh. And, oh, I'm going to miss them and this and that and the other. But at the same time, I could feel there was something beautiful about it. There was something in that release that just made me feel like this innocent child that was just kind of curled up in the corner, sobbing her guts out, because of just releasing all of this pent up pain that has been there over the years. And in addition to all of this shadow material just kind of floating around me, it was all included in that crying. And so I'm very grateful for that. Um, I'm very grateful for that release, because for the very first time, I think I noticed that there was nothing wrong in that crying. There was something just so very perfect about it. And that I could even be grateful to my grandmother for just being a presence in my life. And that even in her passing, she was somehow helpful to me in this regard. Um, again, with her age and the condition, I pretty much felt it was coming. And I had spoken weeks ago about, and it was this grandmother's mother. And I was talking about how after going through all those boxes in my closet, or actually it was just the one box, after going through this one box in my closet and emptying out all kinds of stuff and getting rid of old pictures and old this and old that, how I had come across a card from my great grandmother and how it had been signed fondly and how it just that word had triggered me because it wasn't like love grandma or whatever. It was fondly, which is, I don't know, kind of almost to me, and I'm not saying I'm right, but almost felt like a step above, something you would send to a coworker that you like. Um, and I had remembered her, just the whole memory of her came back into my mind and what the whole family sort of thought about her, about how she seemed cold and distant and clearly had her favorites, and how my grandmother had felt abandoned and not appreciated and not really looked at or seen by my great grandmother. And this whole thing had unfolded in my mind about how, here we've held this woman, a lot of us in the family have held this woman in this regard of being responsible for some of the pain in the family, and how it just occurred to me that I didn't want to see her in that light anymore. And that not only that, but I really just wanted to free her. I wanted to let her know in my mind that I don't hold her responsible for any of the pain that any of us seem to have gone through, and that she was perfect just the way she was, acting out everything that she needed to act out for our own opportunities for forgiveness. And this all went sort of hand in hand with this idea of carrying generational or ancestral trauma, in the mind and expressing itself in the body, and how I had gone through this process. And I didn't seek it out, it just sort of unfolded in front of me naturally, which is about the only way I can ever visualize about how I suddenly found myself in the living room of her old condo with her and sitting in front of her and surrounding her. Behind her were other family members, my grandmother being included in that, and my just taking her hand and looking at her and just saying, I completely forgive you for what you never did. And I invite everybody here to just watch this And that maybe if we can take you down from this seat of condemnation that we've all put you on and have bowed to it, so to speak, to hold you responsible for our pain is just not an action I want to take against you or anybody else anymore. Um, and so, in all of that, I had felt, and I think I'm pretty sure I cried during that a bit too, and I felt much better. And then it had occurred to me about a week or so later, let me visit my grandmother in my mind, the one that was still alive, the one that was kind of hanging on at that point. And what was it that I knew she struggled with throughout her life? And it was the feelings of abandonment, abandonment by her mother, which was the main one. And I think it helped to shape her entire outlook. And it's amazing how we take everything, whatever strong feeling we have in our childhood, and we just take it with us throughout our entire lives. And everything that happens is just an addendum, to that one story. It just keeps filling it and filling it and filling it with more of itself. And, in this little practice, I sat and I invited the image of her in my mind. And what showed up was kind of a picture of her happy and smiling, maybe about 10 to 20 years younger, just this radiant, beautiful smile on her radiant, beautiful face. And I looked at her and I just said, I want you to know that you could never be abandoned, not in truth. And that everything that you've ever worried about, insofar as whether or not you were worthy of love, whether or not you were worthy of attention, all this abandonment that you had felt, I don't want you to leave the body until you until I can tell you that you can't be abandoned. You can only ever be held in love, and I just want you to know that. And I was very, very grateful to have had the opportunity to do that, even just sitting in the same exact spot in my living room, in my mind, and just practicing that. It made me feel a little bit better, just once she passed, that maybe there was some kind of a hope that she was able to hear that, or receive that. But when it comes to these sorts of things, you think about funerals, you think about all of that kind of thing. I had found out she's not going to have a funeral. She donated her body to science. And that's the first I've ever heard of that sort of thing. But in all of that, just in my personal circle, not in general, it doesn't come up very much for me. Um, but that they weren't going to hold an actual in-person kind of funeral or memorial. They were going to do a Zoom thing, and there were other details involved. And it's almost 2 weeks later, and everything has been very silent where that's concerned. And so, in a very similar way to the whole thing with the surgery and not knowing anything, the theme appears to be uncertainty. Uncertainty and what to do within that space of uncertainty. And when I say what to do, I don't mean that there really is anything to do, but I think that there is something that you can or cannot think. And the thinking would go along with, in this uncertainty, I need to go and chase information, or I need to go and make something happen, or I need to find out. In this giant question mark, I am not okay. I have to know. Why would I have to know? Because I have to be in control. So it goes right back to, and I know I've mentioned it, in recent talks, but I've uncovered, or it seems it has been uncovered, that there is this giant need to control within me, and I had never seen it there before. I would have even denied it, but now I can see it as plain as day. I definitely feel this need to control. I need to feel this. I need to know so that I could plan, so that I could give meaning to something, so that I could protect myself. And what also came up in all of this was a revealing, not exactly news to me, but I feel like I'm seeing it maybe with a little bit more depth this time, impatience, right? What does impatience really mean? What does it mean to me? What does it mean to me to be impatient? And that means I need to know now, right? Whatever it is, I think I need to know, whatever it is, I think I need to have, any of it, it needs to be now. I don't want to wait, you know? So what does all of this mean? The the fear of uncertainty, the need to control, the impatience, all of this, I can't just sit here and let life unfold itself the way it's going to. Um, this is what has come to the surface, I would say, the loudest over the last couple of weeks. And I feel that it's just kind of showing me, I guess, what patterns I've held and what they mean to me and how they've hurt me, right? I was listening to a video not that long ago, talking about a lot of Carl Jung's teachings and stuff. And in this one video, there's it's a whole discussion about how the blessings and the miracles are actually in the uncertainty, and how by just letting go and sitting back and trusting in life, how it takes the conscious mind out of everything, which has no answers, which it's not capable of conception. It's only actually capable of perception. But how it's all in the unconscious mind. All of the miracles, all of the everything, all of the knowledge, all of the problem solving, the intelligence with the capital I is what's actually not in your conscious mind. And by sitting in that uncertainty, and even if it's difficult, to just sit and even be willing to trust in that pause, to trust in that silence, to trust in that space where it seems like things should be happening and questions should be answered and things should be moving along. Um, and instead, just sitting there and letting the quiet be the quiet and just remembering, thanks to constant practice, I know nothing. I do not know this thing I am, and therefore I do not know what I'm doing, where I am, or how to look upon the world or on myself. To let that be there and to remind me that I have no idea what information I'm looking for. I don't know what any of it means. I don't even know what this so called problem means because I really only have one problem and it's appearing as many. And that I think I know what the problem is, and that I think I know what it's for, and that I could possibly think I would know what the solution is, and that this blessed, beautiful pause, which under any other circumstances would be maddening, is really just giving me an opportunity to do the very thing I said I wanted to do, which was trust. And trust for a controlling person is difficult, right? I can't tell you. I mean, it was even maybe 10, 15 years ago when I was, on a spiritual path that did not include the course, how much I thought I knew, right? I, that, the course talks about the whole spiritualized ego. And I've heard Ken talk about it. The ego loves to go on the spiritual journey. It loves to learn the course and it loves to learn as much as it possibly can about itself. And how at that time, I did have a lot of insights sort of unfolding, but what I did not have was really any real conception about what the ego was. It was like a half concept, it was a half understanding, like, okay, the ego, it's your titles, it's your identification with form. I didn't even understand that it was an entire thought system and that it was all encompassing and the complete opposite of truth with a capital T or self with a capital S. And so, in that spiritualized ego place, I thought I knew a lot of stuff. And I thought I was learning more and learning more and learning more. And that made me more knowledgeable. And yet, here I sit and I'm realizing that I don't know squat. I don't know anything. I don't know what this world is. I don't know what I am. I don't know what any problem is. I don't know what any of it means. And that it requires, the prize at the end of this, which is simply remembering God, knowing God, you know, being as He created me, as He created all of us. Um, to just sit there and realize, that's the only thing there is to know. And that with everything else I could possibly have ever thought I've known, I will never know God as long as I cling on to everything else I've ever thought that I've known. And just that reminder again, they say that we teach what we most need to learn, and I do not consider myself a teacher in any way, and for the time being, don't want to be a teacher. But as somebody who's just sitting here and talking to, friends over a Zoom call, I'm telling you, I guess, what I need to know the most right now, what I need to learn the most right now. And that is the very things that I've been afraid of, which is the big question mark, the uncertainty, the impatience, the not knowing, um, are probably some of the biggest blessings that are bringing up some massive triggers that are allowing this to all be handed over, which I've been doing, handing this over and saying, you see this for me. I've done enough seeing of my own. I want to have faith in you. I want to have trust in you, Holy Spirit. Um, and I have had faith and I have had trust. So I know that I'm capable of it, but I've had faith and trust in the wrong thought system. So it's really just a matter of transferring it over, and all I can do is be willing over and over and over again, as often as I can remember to do so. So, in all of that, because to me, I would sort of almost equate this so-called knowing with idols, right? To me, needing to know things, needing to have answers, needing any of that stuff, thinking I even know what I could want or need out of anything, to me is just another idol, right? Anything that comes before just that true being is an idol. And so I wanted to read, if it's okay, in chapter 29, The Awakening. There were actually several paragraphs here that really spoke to me. But if it's cool with you guys, I'd like to read a little bit of that. Um, and I'll end after the first paragraph. And then if anybody wants to say anything or anything like that, then I will come back to the chat and take a look. So, The Awakening. What is an idol? This is text chapter 29, section 8, paragraph 1. What is an idol? Do you think you know? For idols are unrecognized as such and never seen for what they really are. That is the only power they have. Their purpose is obscure, and they are feared and worshipped both because you do not know what they are for and why they have been made. An idol is an image of your brother that you would value more than what he is. Idols are made that he may be replaced, no matter what their form. And it is this that never is perceived and recognized, be it a body or a thing, a place, a situation or a circumstance, an object owned or wanted, or a right demanded or achieved. It is the same. And let me just look at the chat real quick. Okay. This paragraph right here, and this sentence rather, it's sentence number 6 in that paragraph. An idol is an image of your brother that you would value more than what he is. I don't know if you guys have ever watched that show, Highway to Heaven. I did not watch it when it came out. I actually didn't start watching it until like last year, and I'm slowly going through it. You can watch it for free on YouTube. And there was an episode sometime within the last year or so where there were these two characters and they're sitting there and they're talking, And one of the characters, the way the show had portrayed him, he would have maybe been considered a little bit slow or a little simple or what have you. And some of the other characters, would kind of make fun of him. So this guy and this somebody else were sitting there talking, and the guy that everybody was kind of considering slow and simple, the one he was talking to, I guess, had called him a name of sorts, or just, I don't know, the way he spoke to him. It was, yeah, he called him a name or something. And so this guy turns to him and he's like, "Why do you label me this? Don't you understand that what you label me, I become to you? You can't see what I truly am if you label me." And I just thought it was so perfect and so profound. And it went right back to, I guess it was lesson two. I've given everything I see all the meaning it has for me. I've given everyone I see all the meaning it has for me. And it's all based on the past. And how much time have I spent in my life idolizing even the labels that I've given to people? And I still do it, albeit I do it, not nearly as often. And more often than not, it's more of a reaction and I tend to catch it. It doesn't happen nearly as often, but I am still capable of seeing the labels that I've given people. I'm reminded of it often by my husband. Um, you know, and it's how much of this sort of thing has sort of like run our lives, right? I think I know what this is. I think I know what this person is. I think I know what this behavior is. And then you keep applying it, and that person becomes the label in your mind, not in truth, but in your mind, the person becomes the label, and it just feeds into this entire cycle. Well, this is what I think of you. So of course, everything I see in you is just going to be a reflection of this label that I've assigned to you. And in that, I am never going to be disappointed. You will always act this way. And until I become conscious enough regularly to understand that that is just a cycle that needs to be given up because it's valueless, and has absolutely nothing to do with truth, that, the only way to truly heal this is to not make this idol out of you, which is this label that I've given you. So, oh, here's a couple things in the chat. Okay, Robert, yes, years ago. Yeah, and Highway to Heaven, like I said, I never watched it when I was younger, but I think it's a great show. Um, and Lynn had put, yes, just like the chorus, projection makes perception. Yep, yep. And in all of this, I could even say, how often have I already been made aware of these concepts? Or could even say, I've been remembering, all of these course concepts all that time, and I practice as much as I can practice. Um, I would have to say this is probably in my mind about 90% of the day, right? There are things that slip by me, especially late at night, when I'm tired, and it's much, much easier to get caught up in whatever story seems to be going on. Because by that point, it's like I'm ready to retire for the day and I'm just not feeling as alert and aware. So I can get caught more often. But just remembering all of this stuff over and over and over again, and what seems to be a constant cycle of idols parading around in front of me, which are thoughts. They're really nothing but thoughts we give attention to and importance to. Um, it's amazing to even think of how much time I had spent in my life not paying any attention at all to that, and just constantly buying into everything I've ever made of everything, which is all based in the past. So in paragraph 2, let not their form deceive you. Idols are but substitutes for your reality. In some way, they will complete your little self for safety in a world perceived as dangerous, with forces massed against your confidence and peace of mind. They have the power to supply your lacks and add the value that you do not have. No one believes in idols who has not enslaved himself to littleness and loss, and thus must seek beyond his little self for strength to raise his head, and stand apart from all the misery the world reflects. This is the penalty for looking not within for certainty and quiet calm that liberates you from the world and lets you stand apart in quiet and in peace. And idols are but substitutes for your reality. In some way, you believe they will complete your little self for safety in a world perceived as dangerous, with forces massed against your confidence and peace of mind. And as I was talking about before, that need for certainty and not having it. And I'm not gonna, as far as this surgery and everything, I'm not going to have any kind of certainty where that's concerned. Like I said, I'm going to be going into this whole thing not knowing what's going on, or what they may or may not find. And it's like, under normal circumstances, if I had not been a student of this course, I don't think I would be able to find that beautiful at all. I think I would find that, I mean, I'm not going to deny it's a little scary, it's a little unsettling, but I would not be able to actually find any kind of beauty in that at all. And I'm not looking for beauty, because if I were to try to look for beauty, I understand I would just be replacing one meaning with another. It's another little trick of the ego thought system. Let me find a more meaningful, more spiritualized meaning, a more beautiful meaning to something, more positive thinking type of thing. And you're just replacing meaning with meaning. And all of the meaning, no matter what side of the coin I could possibly assign to anything, is still not going to be the truth. Right. So, in just even remembering all of that, I have to just stay in this uncertainty and be cool with it, be completely accepting of it, and learn to trust it. Because the world does seem dangerous to me. I'm sure it does to a lot of people. And more and more so, seemingly, as time goes on, as more of the shadow aspects. And I personally feel like I'm seeing the world shadows coming up, right? As opposed to maybe just mine, or so on. I feel like the world shadows are coming up, hence making everything seem more dangerous, because when these shadows materials from the mind tend to come up, if you don't know what they are, it's going to look like the world is attacking you. It's going to look like other people are attacking you, because it's really the attack in the mind that's coming to the surface. And even with awareness, it's extremely unsettling. It can feel extremely unsettling. I can talk about that. I've been experiencing it this past Sunday and Monday. That's exactly how I felt. And I can tell you that the feeling is like visceral. It's like a visceral, abstract sort of terror that feels all encompassing. It can show up at first in specifics until you do what I do, which is stand back and realize everything I look at scares the crap out of me at this point. And it has for a while. That's what catastrophic thinking is. And I had noticed years ago that I was a catastrophic thinker, but I didn't know what that was about. And now I realize that's the fear. That's just the fear of God coming to the surface, and I didn't know how to recognize it. And a lot of shadow material that's been coming to the surface for years, but it's only within the last 3 or so that I've been a course student that I can start to recognize what it is, and what it's for, at least on this level. And know that no matter what it is, no matter what form it shows up in, what story it shows up as, who may or may not be involved, it's all going to be the same forgiveness practice. I think I'm separate. I think I'm a person. And in order for me to keep this going, I have to be involved in what this person appears to be going through according to their script or their code, right? And that has to be me. I have to be completely identified with it. And I have to look at all of it as true. And the only way I'll be able to do that is to have all of the physical and mental and emotional and psychological sensations that go along with it, until you finally kind of shake your head and sit back and just go, I don't know what any of this is. I'm told it's a dream. Doesn't feel like a dream, but I'm willing to see it as a dream, and I am willing to hand over everything that I have made of it in exchange for real sight. And that is basically knowing God, right? It all comes down to knowing God, remembering God. So as far as believing that these idols and so on will complete my little self for safety in a world perceived as dangerous with forces massed against my confidence and peace of mind. Yeah, certainty is definitely an idol. That's the thing that's going to protect me from this big bad world that is out to get me. When, as it turns out, I made the big bad world to be out to get me so that I could experience myself as little, so that I would not remember God and hence stay in the dream. So let me just check real quick. Yep, I see something in the chat. Okay, Robert, you are not alone in that fearful thinking pattern. That seems to be a common thread for all of us at some point. I'm thinking that you're probably referring to the abstract terror that I was just talking about. Because if you were, let me see, iPhone, that's your name is Ms. Cher. That's what I remember. Ms. Cher. Thanks, Dana. Love you all. Yes, NTG. Okay. Yes. All right. It was good to see you here, Ms. Cher. I'm always really thankful to see you here. Actually, all of you. And bye. See you next time. Um, oh, what was I saying? Yeah, that abstract terror. Sunday and Monday of this week. Yep, that's what I felt. In fact, on Monday at one point, it showed up in the form of all of these different phone calls to the different doctors to try to have everything lined up. In the meantime, I had already made the decision a couple of weeks earlier. I'm going to just step back and let him lead the way. I don't want to get involved in this. I've already gotten involved in this, and it seemed like it was proven I don't need to get involved in this, and that by doing so, I'm just creating extra work for myself that's completely unnecessary, which had reminded me very much of when Ken would talk about Helen and the elevator potentially not working, and how before she had gotten all the information, she had already made arrangements to go to a hotel with her husband, just to find out after the fact that none of it was necessary, and that Jesus had been trying to let her know, like, if you had just asked me, I would have told you that none of this was necessary, you know? So it's that even the scribe of the course had a problem resting in uncertainty. So I guess I can forgive myself for the same thing. But all of this, you know, still resulted in all of these phone calls. It seemed I was supposed to be making on Monday, the whole time resisting it, and everything was so confusing. And I felt like there were so many different directions involved in all of these. Call this person, call that person, make sure this person has this information, make sure that person will send it. Oh, but that person needs me to come to the office to sign something in order to send it when it should have already been sent. I'm telling you, it was crazy. And I don't have the mind for this kind of thing. I don't have an intellectual mind. My mind deals better with big picture stuff. Um, and very, very simple things. Anything involved with details and complications and lots of steps, you'll lose me immediately. I'm sitting here, and at one point after all of this, during all of which I was able to remember this is a forgiveness opportunity. I can see myself panicking in the middle of this storm here when my only job is to stay still and just allow, just trust and allow that things will unfold. But that angst, that anxiety, it was visceral. I could feel it in the body. It was so intense, just like it had been for those 2 days, that at one point I'm sitting in front of my laptop, and I kid you not, hands go up and I look at the screen and I'm like, I don't know anymore. I don't know what you want from me. What am I supposed to do here? I don't know anything. I don't know, you know? It was just, I actually felt like a child, just sitting there. I don't know, mom. I don't know what you're talking about. And sure enough, I'd say within the hour, everything just somehow worked itself out. I mean, everybody somehow magically had everything they needed, and that was it. I didn't need to do anything else anymore. But that feeling that visceral, all-encompassing, physical, including feeling of angst and fear, and that the world is just out to get you. And at one point, I remembered something that Ken probably has said many times, which is just, if you're having one of those days, just maybe gently remind yourself, looks like I'm afraid of love today. Okay. you know? And it was just kind of that gentle reminder. Looks like I'm afraid of love for these couple of days, right? I'm in intense fear and I'm feeling it, and there's no escaping it. And there's nothing I can get into when those feelings happen. I don't know. Robert had just said that he can relate to it, and I don't have any doubt about that. And I'm sure other people can probably relate to just that feeling, that feeling of such fear and anxiety and angst, and it's so intense and it is so palpable and it is so visceral that there's just nothing that you can do. There's not one distraction that you can possibly get into that's going to make you feel any better. The only thing that you can do is just sit with it and let it be there. That's when something for me like the Sedona method might be a little bit helpful, even if the only thing I can utter out would be the first sentence, can I let this be here? So, in all of this and everything that I've talked about, it all comes back to, can I be willing to sit in uncertainty? Can I be willing to be in the I don't know? Can I be willing to look at the need to control, the need for answers, the need to plan? And I know that there's nothing wrong with planning, and that it can be a very helpful tool, when it comes to just navigating through the dream. But I think it's the dependency on it. It's the thinking that it's more than what it is. And planning, I think, it can be helpful if it's just an aid, right? If you're given instructions or you're given directions, and there are just maybe there's just a little checklist that can be helpful but doesn't really have any other meaning. That's when planning is probably used in a more holistic way, maybe in a more right-minded way. But if you need information so that you can plan, because the planning is your idol, because the planning is what makes you certain in what's otherwise uncertain, that's when I think it becomes that idol, and can probably keep us stuck. And it's just been an interesting thing to kind of sit back and be in. Can I be okay in the uncertainty? And in that, there's a certain flexibility. There was a metaphor that showed up in my mind. It's not the first time, but I'd say it might be most palpable this time. And what that is I don't know if you guys have ever really noticed how certain trees might act in a storm, right? Because I'm in Florida, and we get hurricanes and stuff. We certainly got plenty over the last few years. And there was something interesting that I had noticed, and that is, I've noticed that these big, strong looking, oak trees, for example, you look at them and they seem so sturdy and so stoic and so strong. And, a big hurricane comes along, and most of the trees that you see that get like broken or knocked over and fallen on people's roofs and stuff, they're the oak trees. So at first glance, you're seeing this strong, sturdy looking, structure. And in a heavy storm, it's a lot more vulnerable to damage. And as opposed to like the palm tree. You look at the palm tree. When I look at most of the palm trees, especially a couple that are on my street, they look tall and long and lanky and weak. But because they're so flexible, they tend to withstand even the strongest storms that come through. So you've got the oak tree, which is rigid and sturdy seeming, right? Real solid. And then you got the palm tree, which looks flimsy, but the flimsy, flexible one is representing flow. Because of its flexibility, it can flow with the winds, no matter how strong they are. From what I've learned, they can withstand winds, I think, of up to about 150 miles an hour, which, if I'm not mistaken, I think is at least a Category 5 storm. Um, where the oak tree, I don't know what winds they can sustain, but those are the ones I would usually see toppled over in people's yards and on top of people's roofs. So it's when you're when you're when you think you're real solid, and when you think you're real sturdy, and when you're inflexible, that's when the strong winds of life will break you. Yet when you're flexible and you just allow yourself to be taken where the wind is blowing, no matter how strong it is, then when it's all said and done, you're still safe, and you're still alive, and you're still intact. And Robert had just put awesome analogy. Yeah, thank you. But that is what had shown up for me, over this last week. So for me, the oak tree represents I need certainty so that I can guard myself and stand real solid and sturdy. But it's in that need for that strength that is not of my own. That's, it's an artificial kind of strength. In that, the winds of life can come along and topple me right over. Whereas if I can just remember to be the palm tree, right? And just, no matter how lanky, no matter how long and skinny and lanky and tall I might appear, um, it's in that flexibility, it's in that ability to flow, that the strongest storm will not destroy me. And so I guess that's what has been most prevalent for me over the last couple of weeks, right? In the storms of life, be the palm tree. So, anyway, um, let me see. Robert had put, may I use that in an essay with credit to you? Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead. Um, I am glad that that resonated with you. And I used to do a lot of writing. I haven't been doing any. I don't have the mindset to do any writing right now. Maybe at some point later in the future that'll wind up in something that I write. But yeah, absolutely, go ahead. I look forward to reading it. And we are just about at 3 o'clock with just a few minutes. LOL. Oh, be a palm tree and drop drop coconuts on your enemies. Hello. Yeah, right. I was thinking about that too. It's what comes from the palm tree as well. And that, I learned that all coconut trees are palm trees, but not all palm trees have coconuts. What is the coconut actually represents, speaking of the palm tree being so strong and resilient because it's flexible and goes with the flow of the winds. The fruit that it carries also serves multiple purposes, right? I mean, the husks can be used for all kinds of material goods. You can eat the coconut, you can drink. I think coconut water is supposed to be one of the most hydrating fluids that there are. So even with the palm tree bears, insofar as the fruit of it is so versatile and serves so many different purposes. So even that I thought was kind of interesting and symbolic. But that's me for the last couple of weeks. So I appreciate you guys being here, and for listening to me, and I hope it was coherent and made sense. Lynn just said, thank you, Dana. We appreciate you, and I appreciate all you guys too.
Right. Thank you so much, Dana. And interesting, and we're keeping up with all of your the things that have been coming up with you, and I'm so grateful that you're willing to share, because when I'm healed, I'm not healed alone. So it's healing for all of us. So thank you so much. And to go ahead and close this out. If you're
Thank
watching us
you.
on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. See you next week.
See you guys next week.